So first off with intercepts, we got two different intercepts here. Okay, the first one is your x-intercept. It's exactly what it says. It's the x-intercept. This is where a line crosses the x-axis. And one important thing to remember here, okay, is it's when y equals 0, okay? So it's where a line crosses the x-axis. Y will equal 0. So a coordinate point would be something like, the point would be x, comma 0. Whatever your x is, and y would be 0 there, okay? So that's where a line crosses the x-axis. Your y-intercept is the opposite. This is where a line crosses the y-axis. All right, so just when y is 0 here, across the y-axis, it's when x equals 0, and the point would be 0, comma y. Okay, so that's our two intercepts, x-intercept and y-intercept. X-intercept where it crosses the x-axis when y is 0. Y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis and x is 0. All right. So, slope-intercept form. We've talked about this before, so some of this may be repetitive. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. M, the number in front of x, this is my slope. And remember, slope is the change in y over the change in x. So like I said, some of this will be repetitive, but I just want to make sure we got it. And b is just what we described up here. This is your y-intercept. Okay, it's where the line crosses your y-axis. This point is important because this is where we'll start when we graph. Okay, you'll start here where you can graph. This is what you use to find different points on the graph. All right. So we're going to do an example. We're going to sketch some graphs. So graphing from slope-intercept. So we're going to graph y equals 2x minus 2. So we're going to sketch a little graph here. And I'll give you guys a second to sketch that. So, first step here. Step 1, we're going to plot the y-intercept. All right, so I need to look up here. My y-intercept is this number right here, is -2, which means on a coordinate grid, my y-intercept is 0, -2. So I'll go here, go 0, down 2, my y-intercept. Okay. And another thing that I would do for some of you is I would label, this might help you. Y-intercept is -2, and my slope equals 2 over 1. And the reason why I write as a fraction is because slope is rise over run. Okay? This tells me I go up 2 over 1. So my next step, we're going to use slope to find 2 extra points. All right? So my slope rise over run, 2 over 1. It's positive 2, means go up 2. So I go up 1, 2, and then run, meaning my x is 1. So positive 1 means I go right 1. So up 2, right 1. Here's a point. Same thing. 1, 2, right 1. Okay? And now we have our line. So what we do from here is we just draw our line. My line. And there you go. Graphing from slope-intercept form. So plot the y-intercept. We use m to find 2 extra points. All right, and then you're just going to draw your line. So I would label, and that might make it a lot easier for some of you guys to do that there. Okay. All right, let's look at another example. We're going to graph y equals, let's say, -3x plus 2. I'm going to sketch me a little graph here. So again, something that may help you guys. Label what you got. My slope, okay, is -3 over 1. Now, something to remember with your slope, okay? This is -3 over 1, or my slope could be 3 over -1, okay? Keep this in mind. And here's why I show this. This is -3 over 1. As a fraction, it would be -3 over 1. It's a division problem. It's -3 divided by 1. -3 divided by 1 is -3. Check. 3 divided by -1 is also -3. So your slope, both of these will work. Both of these will be on the same line. So if you have a graph and you've run out of space, you can go back to your original point and go the opposite direction as long as you're still on that line. Okay? So just remember that and keep that in mind. And my y-intercept is +2. All right. So if I follow my steps here, all right, my first step, let's plot the y-intercept. So I go to my y-axis, find 2, 1, 2, boom, there's my y-intercept right there. Step 2, we're going to find points using slope. So my slope, -3 over 1, rise over run. -3 tells me to go down 3. So if I go down 1, 2, 3, okay, -3. +1 tells me to go right. And I go right 1, there's a point. Same thing. If I go down 3, so 1, 2, 3, right 1, there's a point. And then I'll just connect my dots here. Don't make fun of my crooked lines either. And there's my graph. Now, one thing to remember as we discuss, anything that is y equals, if it's y equals a number, that's a horizontal line. X equals a number is a vertical line. Okay, we talked about that in slope. I told you guys what those equations look like. All right, last part here. Writing an equation from a graph. We're going to write an equation from a graph. So you're going to have questions that give you a graph, and it's going to ask you what is the slope-intercept form equation of this graph, or it's going to ask you to create an equation from a graph. All right, so we're going to sketch a graph here. We're going to graph. Let me try to draw this as neat as possible. I promise I will do my best. And let's say we'll go here and here. Let me connect my dots. So a lot of times they'll give you a graph. Sometimes they'll write the coordinates. I'll write the coordinates just because it's just kind of random, you know. And so this will be 3, 2. So I'll give you all a second to sketch that. So we're writing this equation, okay? Now when we write this equation, all right, we've talked about slope-intercept form. The reason slope-intercept form is the main kind of equation for graphs is because it's so easy to kind of pull from a graph because you're looking for two things. You're looking for a slope and you're looking for the y-intercept. All right. So what we need to do here is we know that we're going to write this in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So step one, we need to locate the y-intercept if it has one. Sometimes the y-intercept won't be exact and we'll have to figure that out, but we'll get to that later on down the road. So we're going to locate the y-intercept. So we go to our y-axis here. We try to find the spot where this line crosses the y-axis. Okay, crosses right here. All right. Now, we know that, number one, because we see it cross, but number two, we know that because x equals 0. If x equals 0, it's a dead giveaway. All right. So by looking here, I know that my y-intercept equals -1. Okay, my y-intercept is -1. Step two, we're going to determine the slope. Now, from our last lesson, we have learned 2 to 3 different ways to find slope. Okay, we know I can go to this graph and I can physically count, go through my little stair step here. All right, go from point to point. So create kind of like a road map from point to point and count your slope. Okay, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is we can use our slope formula. Slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we can use that. All right, so a couple of different ways to find our slope. Whichever one you think is easiest. Now, you might think, well, Mr. I'm just going to count these and be done. Sometimes that is easier said than done because you will have points that might say 3/2, comma, 2.6. All right, it might be kind of tricky to navigate. So that's why I want to make sure we understand both ways to do this. Okay, so if we use our formula, I would label my points. x1, y1, x2, y2. Whoops. And then we would sub them in. y2 is 2 minus y1, which is -1, over x2 is 3 minus x1, which is 0. Keep, change. So 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 minus 0 is 3. And if I simplify this, it would give me 1. Okay. And the last step, we're going to plug into equation. Okay, because we have to write an equation. You can't just say y-intercepts this, slope is this, I'm done. No, we got to take these numbers and sub them in to write my equation. All right, so my equation, we sub into our right parts, is y equals, what's m? Right here, m is 1. So we can write 1x. We don't have to, but for this case, I'll write 1 just so I can show you guys where to substitute. All right. Now, the plus b. Do you all remember with distributive property when I said let your sign determine your operation? You can either write plus -1, okay? So I can write plus whatever b is, which is -1, okay? Or you could write like this, y equals x minus 1. Both of these are the same exact equation and the correct answer. All right, so either way you write this, it is correct. Now, sometimes in multiple choice, it'll be different. In IXL, it may look different than this, okay? But that's all right. There's nothing wrong with putting 1x plus -1. There's nothing wrong with just putting x minus 1. These are exactly the same, okay? So when you write an equation from a graph, look for that y-intercept first. Find it, all right? And then you find your slope either by counting or you can use your slope formula there to do that too. Okay. Now sometimes it might say write an equation when given 2 points. Let's look at an example like that. We're going to turn a page here. All right. We're going to write an equation from 2 points. Let's say one of our points is -1, -4, and 2, 3. So again, the easiest way, I'm going to use slope-intercept form again because I know that I only have to find 2 pieces here. So what I would do in this case, step 1, I would find the slope. Okay, and if you remember, our slope is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then I would label x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 is 3 minus y1, which is -4, over 2 minus x1, which is -1. Then we solve here. Keep, change. 3 plus 4 is 7. And 2, keep, change, plus 1 is 3. So my slope is 7 over 3. If I sub that in up here, 7 over 3. And we have my x. Okay. So first step is done. I found my slope. So what else do I need for this equation? Well, I need my y-intercept. This is not as easy. So step 2, we're going to find the y-intercept. Okay. Now, just by looking at this, you might be like, Mr. Reed, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Think about the properties of the y-intercept. What happens at a y-intercept? The main thing we know that happens, we know that x is equal to 0. Okay, so watch this. I take my slope that I found, all right, and I know for a fact this equation is y equals 7/3 x plus b. That's what it is right now. I don't know what b is. Okay, that's what I'm trying to find. What do I know? Well, I know when x is 0, okay, that's my y-intercept, but I can't plug that in right now. If I plug in 0 here, I'm just going to get y equals b. It gives me no information. Okay, so what we're going to do here to find this y-intercept, we're going to choose one of the points and substitute. Okay, so one of these 2 points, we're going to choose one. It doesn't matter. We're going to sub it in here. Okay, why would I sub that in? Because these 2 points are both on this line. They're both a solution to this line. All right, so let's just choose. We'll just keep it positive. We'll just choose this point. Okay, so I'm going to sub this in here. So this would be my x, this would be my y. So when I substitute, my y is 3 equals 7/3 times my x, which is 2, plus b. And now we're going to substitute, we're going to solve for b here. Okay, so 7/3 times 2 is going to be 14 over 3, because you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. Oh man, this problem's going to get messy. Just great. Oh well. We'll be all right. So now we're solving an equation. So if I subtract 14/3 from both sides, subtract 14/3, all I have left over here is b. And 3 minus 14/3. Oh, this is going to be fun. So if I do 3 minus 14/3, put 3 over 1, find a common denominator, which this would be 3 and 9. So 9 minus 14 is negative 5 over 3. So this is going to be negative 5/3 for my b. And I just did that real quick to save time. You have your Desmos calculator to help you. Always remember that Desmos calculator. So my b is negative 5/3. So when I sub it in up here, so that means that my equation for this line from 2 points is y equals 7/3 x minus 5/3. All right. This is a little more complicated than finding it from a graph. All right. But with this, we have to use prior knowledge. Prior knowledge meaning I know that if I use slope-intercept form, I got to find slope and I got to find the y-intercept. I have prior knowledge of slope, that this is my slope formula, and I can label, substitute these in, and solve. I also know for a y-intercept, this only happens when x equals 0. Okay, that's when that happens for my y-intercept. So I got to try to solve that and figure that out. All right, and I can just use one of these 2 points. Now, if I use this point here, I will get the same exact answer. Okay, if I take this point, substitute it in, I'll get the same exact answer. So it doesn't matter. Don't stress over which point to use. All right.